Now I think we are left with very little time for question and answers. So let it suffice for this evening. If anyone would like to inquire anything about anything, ask a question, not necessarily regarding this commentary, anything, you're most welcome. Yes, please. मैंने कहा फ़ोन कर दिया था इजिप्ट हवालों के लिए, हाँ खत ले दिया, वो खत कब पहुँचता है इजिप्ट? बहुत अच्छा, ठीक है.
Hazur Malik Sahab has written in a note form in the Holy Quran translation. It is also to be noted that though Islam declares all prophets of God to be safe from influence of Satan, the Bible does not ascribe this protection to Jesus. Could you explain this, please?
Hasn't he explained?
He hasn't. No?
He has. He has also referred to the book of the Bible and the chapter of the Bible from which he implies, he thinks it is implied that Jesus was not given that protection. And he refers to that incident where Jesus was tried for 3 days and nights by Satan. So how can you say that Malik Sahib has not given the reference to this?
No, sir, sorry sir, I didn't explain. Only in this verse he just gives the reference of Mark 1:12.
That is it. Mark 1:12 is the reference.
Oh, I see. I haven't got that. Sorry, yes.
You should have read it and you would have found it there.
May I ask second question, please? Small one.
But, I personally, I don't support this style of rebuttal. If there is a hot debate between a Christian and a Muslim and somebody is abusing the Holy Prophet of Islam, out of, a sort of injured feeling, sometimes one has resort to such style of rebuttals. But generally speaking, normally it's not fruitful. What you should explain is simply this fact that the only reason why the Holy Quran has stressed particularly the chastity of Mary is because she was under allegations. She was, the one against whom such wanton things were said. So the Holy Quran came to the defense, and there was no reason for every prophet's mother to be defended by the Holy Quran. Otherwise, this would only be a book of defense of mothers and nothing else. Because according to the Muslims, there are 124,000 prophets all over the world. So each prophet's name should be taken and each prophet's mother should be defended. What sort of book that would be? That is the enough answer, in my opinion, and we should, generally speaking, suffice at that. But if somebody is very nasty and hurts you repeatedly, to teach him a lesson once or twice, as Masih Maud had to do sometimes, you can do it. But don't rely on these things in the first place. Yes? Please.
Assalamu alaikum, Hazur.
Wa alaikum rahmatullah.
Hazur has mentioned that some historians deny historically the existence of Hazrat Moses alayhi salam.
Stories? I didn't say that. I said some deny.
Some deny
the existence of even Moses and
yes.
Jesus Christ, peace be upon him.
Yes.
And their argument is simply this, that they are stories without historical evidence. For instance, they would say that in the history of the Egyptian kings, these events are not noted. They are not mentioned. We have got all the historical records of the, from the rediscovered pyramids, etc. And the full history of the important events of those days is recorded, And we don't find any mention of Moses, etc., and what happened and all that story. So they say they are stories.
No, Azur, I got something else to ask.
Yes, please.
The history is, some of the events in history are formed by the excavations or the events. For example, the old skulls were found or something, then they may go back to history. In the Holy Quran, it is written that the body of Pharaoh will be saved, and now it is found. And it's become a historical fact that the body is found. And historians say that this is the Pharaoh.
How those people who are not even aware of the Holy Quran, they're Christian scholars, so far they have been taught whatever they received or religious education from Christian sources. How can you expect them to study the Holy Quran so minutely and reach certain historical avenues through the windows opened in the Holy Quran, which are not even visible to most of the Muslim scholars, which have been pointed out to us by Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ and his caliphs, etc., and Ahmadi scholars. So how can you expect those people who are totally ignorant of Islamic teaching and the Holy Quran to have mended their views about Moses, etc., because of these verses which you are quoting? I'm surprised. What I said was that the Christian scholars have thrown some doubt on the existence, so-called Christians. They're not Christians, in fact, they're atheists in reality. But the moderns, in the modern age, it is possible. Previously it was impossible in the Christian society for anybody to cast a doubt about these things. It was a blasphemy of an order that perhaps if he was born 100 years ago, he would be burnt alive. But today people have started expressing their views, whatever they are. And they say, because but I don't agree with them, of course. Of course I don't agree with them. But
I know Azur did
I
not
just
agree.
mentioned, if somebody had asked me, what about the Holy Quran? Is it only a revelation, and what extra it has given to you? Then of course I would turn to that. And I would tell them that the Holy Quran is not merely a revelation. It also reveals certain facts in which history is correlated with religious processes and correlated in a manner that it would be impossible for man to deny. That is the beauty of the Holy Quran, but that's not the subject at this time we're discussing. That was completely a different thing in which I was telling you.
Yeah, Azur, that I wanted to.
Jazakallah. Now Rashid Sahib, was it Rashid Sahib? Dr. Sahib, after Rashid, Chai Abdul Rashid Sahib, I'll give you the time, yes, because I have already promised him. Please come.
Jazakumullah, Azur. My second question was, this is my second question.
Second, where is the first one?
I have asked one already.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
When someone is reciting the Holy Quran, only sometimes one feels these special delights, dil ka surur. But this does not happen very often. Could you kindly just give...
When you eat at home 3 or 4 times a day, do you experience that special delight every time?
I want to know...
I want to know also, please.
Tell me why it doesn't happen all the time?
Pardon?
It doesn't happen all the time.
No. While that should happen to you because you are very fond of eating. And still you don't derive that kick every time. And if you are reading a book with which you are not fully aware, completely familiar, and which you can't understand properly all through, and no one can claim that. So there are times when you go off the track and you are lost in your own views and things, or just reciting just like a drill and so on. So what happens is that when you go through the same passages over and over again, sometimes suddenly the same passages are revealed to you in a manner that they completely overwhelm you. So this is what I want to point out to you. If I accept your statement as such, that will be a reflection upon the beauty of the Holy Quran, which I do not accept. Your statement would indicate that there are certain verses of the Holy Quran which are capable of moving you specially. But I mean, this is the way of looking at your statement, at which I looked at this way. And there are instances and places which are capable of moving somebody, but there are other passages of the Holy Quran which comparatively are barren, which are devoid of that special power of moving you. That is not so. The emphasis goes on shifting from place to place according to your own capability of understanding the Holy Quran, and according to the special frame of mind in which you find yourself at a particular event, at a juncture in your life. Sometimes the same verse, which you had completely overlooked previously, suddenly comes to the focus, and then you realize that, oh, this verse has that beauty. Why? Because at that time you are rightly prepared, mentally prepared, more, as if you were just wanting such a thing. That is why I pointed out to your habit of eating. When you are really hungry for something, and particularly for some particular dish, and if that is offered you, you derive a very special kick from that. For instance, I know you like sweets very well, but not every time, and not all sweets. But if you are hungry and also hungry in a manner that at that particular time you are craving sweets, then the sweet of your choice is offered you, then you will take a very special note of that, So this is how your own internal preparation and the atmosphere in your mind has a lot to do with that pleasure which you derive from the study of the scriptures. Hello, fellow. Whom do I see? When did you arrive, please?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Such a pleasure. Come here and not like this, but meet me. Faiz, please. What a pleasant surprise, eh? Have you learned enough English now to express yourself? Or shall we have to find a French interpreter?
I speak English very little. I speak French.
Better.
Yes.
But I think you have improved your English somewhat, haven't you?
Yes, I know. Understand.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Better?
Yes. I not speak good.
Good. Yes. Okay. So we'll have to find some interpreter. Eh? Previously, your friend was helping you in this regard. When you came last time, your friend was here. What was his name? He is Faiz.
Issa. Je suis arrivé maintenant. Je priais pour Mustafa Sabit Sahib pour faire la traduction.
And I understand that much.
Yes.
Yes, good. Yes, please. If I find some time to practice speaking Arabic and French, I think within a matter of a month I can be, capable. I think I can regain my touch and will be able to express myself fluently and easily. Because most of the Arabic al-Fusha I understand just normally, but it is because of the lack of practice. In our school days, we were never taught to speak Arabic. So unfortunate, we were only taught to read and write. So automatically it doesn't come to us. There is always some lock in between which has to be opened. But also the similar, not of the same degree, but something like this can be said about my French. When I go to France, within a matter of a few days, I am able to converse in French. I can read and understand letters which are written in French to me. And once Saki Sahib was a bit suspicious about that claim. So what I did was, I translated the letter in his presence and said, now go and give it for translation to Bhuno Sahib. And when he brought back, I hadn't missed anything, that was just a correct translation. So I could understand him all right, but difficult to speak. So, any other question which could last? I mean, question and answer. For question and answer, we have 4 minutes now. Please, go ahead. 8 baje hai namaz? 8 o'clock? Huh? Oh, I'm sorry, already overshot, huh? Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Hazur, my question is about tabligh. I've got 2 friends in college.
Yes.
And over the last 2 years, they've been moving from, I would say, a state of agnosticism to more religious frame.
Good.
And obviously I've been trying to influence
Yes.
them. But I've come across a barrier which at the moment seems
insurmountable, huh?
Sorry?
It seems to be insurmountable.
Yes, at the moment. That is the problem of cultural barrier as opposed to religious barrier. That
Yes.
despite the fact that they've expressed how they accept that Islam is a good religion and so on and so forth, yet inevitably they are moving more towards a Christian. They want to become Christians or whatever. And I feel it's not because they feel that it's particularly better religion. It's just that to become Muslim would also entail a complete change in culture, as not merely just a change in their thoughts.
So you have already diagnosed the problem very correctly. They're not moving towards God. They're moving to superstitions and a different way of life. Because if they were moving towards God, then culture would become, just meaningless and insignificant to them as compared to the value of God himself. So that is to say, they're not convinced enough. They wanted to believe in something because there is an urge in everybody, and that belief can start in a vague manner, generally speaking. And with that, if you are not fully aware of the value of God and the true importance of this belief and the concomitant responsibilities upon you, then of course you would seek the path of least resistance first. The easy way of compromising with your way of life, compromising your way of life with the new concept, so that you have to give in very little. You have to sacrifice very little. So in Islam, these people who are not fully and deeply convinced of God's existence to a degree that that belief should change their way of life or is potent enough to dominate them, it's automatic. They would start moving in the direction where they have to change themselves very little and yet have compromise with the belief. This is called the path of least resistance. You should understand it better because you are a scientist. So try to improve the quality to a degree that they should become meaningful. And tell them that if there is God, start discussing. How should he behave? What relationship you should have? How can you reach him? Let them first decide these issues. After you have entered this discussion, then you will find that it would become impossible for them to accept anything but the true Islamic belief in the purity of unity. And are they scientists like you are?
The scientists, yes.
So it is easier for them now. Because I believe it's very difficult for Christian scientists to change their way of life, because somehow they have been compromising things, and trying to find some relationship, even vague, with their scientific views, between their scientific views and the religious views. But those who are atheists, they have no such background in history. So it is easier for you to hold them through the path of logic and through keeping them fixed on the path of scientific observations. Then inshallah, I think you will be able to lead them rightly, step by step, to Islam.
Yes.
But again, I must point out that logical evidence of God or even scientific evidence of God's existence is not enough. It cannot create seriousness. It cannot create that impact of a living person of God, which is essential for changing one's ways of life. What is essential is a direct communion with God, and to present God as a living being who is also a loving being. And if he is a loving being, he should also be a responding being. So you must call them to this area, our relationship, and tell them not to believe just vaguely. If there is a God, he has to be a meaningful God who has created everything, and there should be some ways of the conscious being here on earth to have some communion with him. That being so, you can read to them passages from the Holy Quran, from Hazrat Rasulullah sayings, traditions, and Hazrat Masih Maud writings, which emphasize this area, our relationship of man and God. So, inshallah, if you do that, you will find a real spiritual change in them. And also, I advise you to seek help from God with prayers. Those who preach and ignore the importance of prayer, generally speaking, they are deprived of the fruit of their labor. But those, I'm only speaking of religious preachers. In the worldly affairs, a different phenomena is operating. But here, this is my experience. So you better pray for them. And when you pray for them, you'll be surprised to find changes. You know, visible changes in their attitude, and they would go through certain experiences and relate them themselves to you, which would surprise you. And also tell them to pray for themselves before deciding. Tell them it is a very dangerous now. You have entered a very dangerous phase now. You know there is a God, but how to reach him? There are thousands of voices claiming, come to us, we'll lead you. So if you, after all that labor, you follow a wrong call, you'll destroy the whole effort. So instead of deciding for yourself, why don't you leave it to God and pray to him in all earnest and seek his help? That is an understandable thing. Easily, I think they can be convinced of this. So inshallah that these measures would help you.
Yes, my main approach is to try and emphasize this unity of God, and that they should pray to God directly. And not
you are doing it?
Yeah, sorry?
You are already doing it?
I'm already on the approach.
And are you praying also for them?
Yes, that's
very good. So you are on the right path. So something should be done to improve the quality of your prayer.
Yes,
you're
right.
So that is to say, you have to put more labor into it. You see? And also the style of prayer about which I have already advised you. Seek from the Holy Quran, such prayers as have been begged of Allah in this area by various prophets. When they were overwhelmed, when nobody listened to them, what was their reaction, how they prayed to God, how God responded. So the Holy Quran is full of many examples of such things, so make use of them.
Could I just request, could you refer me to a particular verse in the Quran in which a prophet, someone especially prayed for somebody else to be found in the right path?
Right from the A to Z, the Holy Quran is so full of these things,
Okay.
In your daily recitations, inshallah, you will come across these things. I don't know which is going to be more appropriate for you, because some prayers and some verses would move you more than some others. It's not necessary that always my choice should befit you. So you do it for yourself. And that's also a very interesting search. That would help you yourself coming closer to God.
Thank you.
So now I think it's time for prayer. So we should call it a day.